Yep, nope.
Here it is, folks.
I don't pretend to be a good person about this.
Jesus Christ. Lounge 232 on the air. Nathan Stacken right there. And Travis Krins here. Charlie Hildebrand over there. Aaron Rodgers got hurt. We'll have our one NFL note here quick. Clean play. Guys like Peterson. If you beat your wife, I hope bad things happen to you. Things like that. Rodgers, as far as I know, doesn't beat his wife or girlfriend. All-around good guy.
Olivia Munn left him.
Yep, he did. So good for him for doing that for a while. Thumbs up. 2 big thumbs up right there. So best quarterback in the league is out for a while. Probably at least a couple months. I told Stacken. They better hope he's out for the rest of the year, because if he's not and they make the playoffs, they might be pretty good. So, thoughts on Rodgers potentially missing? I think he'll be back for the playoffs.
I fear he will come back Christmas Eve against the Vikings, or the day before Christmas Eve. And it'll be a game that the Packers potentially get into the playoffs. And he will shine, and the Packers will get in. And just like the year they made it to Dallas, where they were the 6th seed, and they had to win 3 straight games, they'll do that, and they'll make it to Minneapolis. So I hope and pray every year, because, and you know what, I know I am a very sick individual for wishing or taking joy in the fact that someone is injured. I just can't have the Packers winning the Super Bowl at U.S. Bank Stadium this year. Can't have it. And I mean, it's not just Aaron Rodgers that got injured in this game. I think like half the Packers team got injured. So they should hire a strength and conditioning coach, a new one, and fire the old guy, maybe teach some yoga, do something, because they're a team that cannot stay healthy. But, of course, first and foremost, the injury to Aaron Rodgers is the biggest one of all. And the fact that they have not given a definitive timetable leads me to believe that he will probably be back if they have a chance to make the playoffs or win the division. If not, they might just shut him down. That would probably be the smart thing. But the little caveat of could miss the entire season leads me to believe that he will not miss it all.
He missed 7 weeks, I guess, when he broke his left collarbone. He didn't have surgery. This is his right collarbone. He throws with his right arm, so it should be more than 7 weeks. So who knows? I hope it is that Christmas game against the Vikings. I hope that's the division decider. And I hope the Packers win.
Such a hater against the Vikings.
Fuck the Vikings. Charlie, a lot of injuries. Which one is the biggest? Not named Aaron Rodgers.
Not named Aaron Rodgers.
Got J.J.
I would say probably Odell Beckham Jr. I don't know if he's the best, but he's an offensive skill guy. So he's going to get more pub than J.J. Watt will. So I go with Odell Beckham.
There we go. That's your 3 minutes, maybe 2 minutes of NFL. I already feel disgusted by that. Yes? We have one final thing.
2 quick notes here.
Okay. You look, hey, Charlie. Who does Stacken look like? I think Stacken looks like somebody. Who does he look like?
Stacken, say something quick so your thing pops up.
Yeah, so I'm talking here. Let me keep talking.
If you just look at his little box there, I think he looks like somebody.
But do I look like Amon?
I think you look like, I think you look like Bo Pelini.
I never thought of that, but now that you say it with the gray and the white hat, actually does.
I like it.
Fuck you, Bo Pelini.
Fuck Jesus Christ.
You know what? Maybe why don't you beat the Bison for once? Thanks a lot, pig.
What do we got? Strawberry? What are we sucking on here?
Yep, strawberry.
All right.
Strawberry flavored water. The best, though, is the cherry limeade that you can
Oh, my heavens. Yes, it is.
It tastes like a melted icy. It's phenomenal.
It just tastes good.
I can't highly recommend that stuff more.
Cherry limeade, I think, may have knocked Key Lime off the pedestal for #1. Very strong for cherry limeade. Any other NFL notes here before we get to sports?
Yep.
Not good, but better than they were 3 weeks ago.
Dolphins, they beat a team.
When the Falcons just don't even come out of the locker room in the second half. But you're right.
They forfeited?
Essentially, yes. A much maligned Dolphins offense. found a way to score 20 points in the second half, beat the Falcons. Child beater, though, did get 138 yards and a couple touchdowns in Arizona this week, so he's going to get over 300 yards for the entire year.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Resurgence reborn. I don't know what's going on there, and I hate to bring this up and end on a sour note, but Scott Trubisky did pull out a win today for the Chicago Bears.
Let's see how he did. Let's see how he did. How'd he do?
It wasn't great.
Oh, is that right? He wasn't good.
No, he did throw a touchdown at least. So that's good. But he did lead them on a game-winning drive in overtime, thanks in part to Jordan Howard.
The running
maybe flip-flopping a little bit. I'm not saying I'm on the Scott Trubisky bandwagon, but I don't have the same disdain for him that I did. Don't have a great reason why, but for some reason, I was just like, I don't know, this guy looks better than Mike Glennon, I guess.
Wow.
Because he's more 8 of 16 for 113 yards and a touchdown. So when they take the training wheels off of him, that would be great.
8 of 16, that's good.
Yeah. Jordan Howard, 36 rushes today for 167 yards, so they're going to run his ass into the ground.
It's not like the Bears have ever done that with a running back before.
Oh, wait.
Now to the sports portion of the program. We start with the baseball, since the baseball is being played. Washington Nationals do Washington National things. They lose a Game 5 to the Chicago Cubs, 9-8. Just another terrible loss and a long list of losses in the last 5 years for Washington. Charlie, why? Why does this continue to happen to a team that by all means is good? And
that's a great question. I know I saw on TV, like I knew in recent years, but they showed other highlights from even longer ago, and I didn't know it had been this bad. And you start wondering, I think it just must be something from the top. And I don't mean like manager necessarily.
God.
Just something wrong. And, worst case scenario, I guess they need to keep plugging away with good players to hope they can eventually break this streak. But, it feels... I don't want to be too reactionary and say
they're winning.
Good players, but, having your guy out there give up, Scherzer gave up like 2 runs when he shouldn't have, and he's like,
it was a disaster.
Very odd scenario.
Nathan Stacken, what more can they do? Cubs, they were a favorite in this series. I sure as hell didn't like them. Why? Because they've never won before. Just a disaster all the way around. Bryce Harper's going to leave after next year. So you've got Scherzer there. You've got they just signed Strasburg to a long deal. Thankfully, he pitched Game 4. He was great.
Got Gio.
You say a lot. You're not surprised. I would say you were not surprised by Washington losing a Game 5 at home.
Dare I say they capitalized on this situation here?
Yeah, you can, and you did. There you go.
That's an a la reference to the Washington Capitals and their failure in the postseason.
I thought we were talking sports, Stack, and I thought we were talking sports. I just...
I don't know if... let's think back here. This game was freaking ridiculously
fucking insanity
long.
Is what it was.
It was 37 minutes for a 9-hour game. Let's go back here, though, and think about pitching... Scherzer, what was that, in the 4th or the 5th inning?
Yeah.
Do we agree with this or not?
Yep. Game 5, your best guy's got to be there. The result, I'm not too concerned about the result. If I lose with my best guy, I'll take that every time. Sale, Verlander.
You're gonna lose doing what you do best.
Yes.
Don't lose left-handed.
Who's taking the last shot? Jordan's taking the last shot, not fucking Judd Bushler. It's Michael Jordan.
But do you think Gio should have been pitching a little longer than what he did?
No, he was bad as well. Gio Gonzalez was not good. First inning gave up a run, wild pitch. Second, third inning was better. And then 4-1, they were ahead in the third inning. Gives up a couple runs. It's 4-3. Gonzalez, also bad. Bad in the game.
So I think
they pitched poorly. They pitched poorly on both sides. It was 9-8, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So I guess looking at it, I was, Dusty Baker oftentimes gets ridiculed for the managerial decisions he made. So I was curious to see what you thought of having them go to Scherzer there. How about the challenge call by Madden there in the 8th inning? Do you agree that it should have been called? Because arguably, Washington kept getting a run here, getting a run there. I think they would have probably scored another run in there because Wade Davis certainly wasn't instilling any confidence from the Cubs bullpen. I think they would have at least tied the game up at that point, maybe gone on to win. Unfortunately, Dish just, for whatever reason, stopped showing the game. Cut it off. I don't know if service got cut or something for a while, but I was staying up for this game. I flipped it over after the football game and was highly entertained by it. And unfortunately, TBS just froze up and couldn't watch it at all. But Madden's challenge, I saw this, and then that's when it froze up. But I disagree that it should have been overturned. I think that was really difficult to see. And then karma happened to come back and bite Madden in the ass in Game 1 Saturday. So that was good to see.
As far as I know, rules of baseball is you have to be on the bag. He was not on the bag, so he's out.
Was it conclusive?
Oh, yeah. He was clearly off the bag. Charlie, do you have any thoughts on this replay? A lot of people didn't like it. Jose Lobaton was off of the base. You're out.
Yep.
Are you surprised? I mean, people went absolutely insane about this, and they're saying this was not the intent of replay. Your thoughts on their reaction to this?
I mean, there's always going to be replay in crucial moments, and every fan base on the planet thinks that they're cursed, and there's a conspiracy out to get them. So whenever something's controversial, someone's just always going to say that, this is wrong and we need to change everything. And there's just times that, like guys who might be the MVP giving up runs when they're not supposed to, there's times replay doesn't work how some people want it to either. It's just one of those small fraction of a percentage that happens sometimes.
What did you think, Stacken? There was a catcher interference, which I thought was a much more important call, I think in the 5th inning. Earlier in this game, that was not called. This was not called. This should have been catcher interference. Cubs should have been out, but Wieters throws it to first, throws it in the right field. Cubs score. This, I figured, was a much more important play, considering the Cubs scored and the Cubs won by 1. Nobody wants to talk about this. They want to talk about some bullshit in the 8th inning. I thought this was the call, and it was clearly missed.
I was fast forwarding to Saturday, so I did not see that one. So
nobody's talking about this. Like, batter swung.
I didn't know about this. So
it's amazing. I mean, that's part of the deal. Like, people are, whatever. People they're all about this tag. So that's unbelievable how that works. So Washington loses. Cubs go on to advance. There was also Game 4 in Houston-Boston on Monday afternoon. That was great. They bring in Verlander. That was a good little deal out there. Verlander and Sale, 5th, 6th, 7th inning. That was fun to watch. And Verlander and Houston, they get the win. Anybody here not like? Yes.
Oh, I was just going to say, then Verlander comes and pitches one of the great games you could possibly pitch, I would say, against the Yankees on Saturday. Going the distance, 115 pitches.
4 or 5 hits.
How many strikeouts did he have? He had at least a dozen, right?
Yeah.
Was there 10? I mean, he was just phenomenal. And that's coming on relatively short rest, considering he did have to come in and pitch
Monday.
And I think you and I talked about on the podcast.
This has nothing to do with Northern Iowa. Nothing to do with them at all.
Sorry.
Okay.
We'll get to that momentarily here.
Okay.
But we discussed how managers oftentimes get criticized for their decisions in October that they wouldn't make during the regular season. Mm-hmm. And I think I would be curious to see, had Houston lost that game in Boston, how it would have affected Verlander's status for a Game 5 or even Game 1 of this series against the Yankees. But clearly it all worked out, and Verlander is just a machine, and he's the difference maker. Now, the Astros going out to get him is going to be the reason why they win the World Series, in part because Cleveland is no longer in the thing.
That's right. I will never criticize a manager for putting his best pitcher in the game. If he does that, whatever happens, happens. I'll never criticize him for doing that. Yes.
Just to go back to the Nationals then, you don't criticize Dusty Baker for anything that he did in Game 5 per se?
For Scherzer, no. I mean, his lineup, you got Jason Worth, who's not very good, batting second, and you have Rendon.
Is that what you're saying?
Huh?
He's worthless?
He sucks. He fucking sucks. You got him batting second, then you got MVP candidate Anthony Rendon batting sixth. So you can maybe switch those two, put the good guy at 2, put the bad guy at 6. So I would say that was a bad move if I'm going to criticize him there at all. And Joe Madden as well for playing Ben Zobrist in the series at all. So you got Houston going on. You got the Dodgers moving on. You got the Cubs moving on. You have the Yankees moving on.
Is this the part for ratings guru expert Stacken on how you feel about the 4 largest cities in the United States being the 4 teams remaining in the MLB playoffs?
Well, I mean, now that I didn't even know that.
I
didn't even think about that until you just mentioned it. I didn't even give that a thought. But honestly, out of the 4, it should come as no surprise that the Astros would be the worst possible draw of the 4 teams remaining. The Yankees and Cubs have significant fan bases. And it's not just the fact that it's the 4th largest city and last of the 4 teams. It's just that the following that the Astros have isn't nearly as large as, say, the Yankees or the Cubs. The Yankees-Cubs would shatter records, I feel like. Yankees-Dodgers, maybe not as much, but I think baseball is in a pretty good position regardless of what the World Series matchup will be. But yes, the ratings-wise, I think this will be good.
I believe only man with his World Series pick out there is Mr. Hildebrand with Yankees-Dodgers. Everybody else was Cleveland this, Cleveland that.
Don't tell anyone. I'm glad Cleveland lost because the lady at work.
That's right.
And I kind of got sick of talking about it.
Screw the lady at work.
As a Cubs fan, kind of getting sick of talking about the Cubs too. So I hope it's
Yankees-Dodgers.
Dodgers.
This Yankees game, they're down 0-2 in the series. They come back and they beat Cleveland. Cleveland 1 year after losing games 5, 6, and 7 in the Cubs, being up 3-1, now lose games 3, 4, and 5. So that's 6 straight games in which they could have won the World Series or advanced here, and they blow it again. Hildebrand, one of the great choke jobs of all time, back-to-back here. My God.
Especially when you combine last year and this year, that's rough.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know what Faustian deal or monkey paw thing LeBron did to win the one with Cleveland Cavaliers, but the rest of Cleveland's paying for it now, it seems like.
Stacken, you got to be surprised that the Yankees came back to win the series.
Well, I think absolutely, because the pitchers that, Bauer didn't pitch very well at all in Game 5. Kluber didn't pitch well at all in this series. And that was everyone was kind of touting the Indians starting pitching against the Yankees, and they just flat out failed. The bats disappeared at the end, but this is why a lot of people like the Yankees bullpen. This is why the Yankees went to the bullpen so early against the Twins, because they know they have this stellar cast in there, and that's the real difference. I think the Yankees certainly are a team that is
on the come.
On the come. They're on the come. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And they will continue to be. I think they've exceeded expectations very much so this year. Yeah, Houston aside.
Yeah.
But I think, as Sports Illustrated kindly put it a few years back, 2017 is the year of the Astros.
That's right.
And that's what I will say. The Astros win this series. But the Yankees, already being in a 2-0 hole, this isn't anything new to them. However, the Astros have to win 4 games. It's not just 3. So let's see what they can do.
I got Houston Dodgers winning in 5. That's what I got. So probably go 6. So we'll see what happens there.
I like that.
The college football from the weekend. Didn't see much last week. Didn't see much this week. Not going to see much next week either. But according to the papers this morning, this, Charlie, was the week of the upsets. Friday night, Clemson dead. Cougars dead. Late last night, Washington loses. San Diego State loses. Some undefeated teams. They get out of there. Had some potential upsets that nearly happened.
Not undefeated, but I think 10th or 12th ranked Auburn also
they lost.
Yep. Ranked 10.
Kind of opens up the deal here. People were talking about how this was the death of the Pac-12 because Washington and Washington State lost USC. They beat Utah by a point. Washington State was 8th, but nobody considered them a serious threat to win the conference or get in the playoff. And for Washington, it would all come down to if they could get out of the regular season undefeated and play USC and come down to that. So any hope of Pac-12 getting 2 teams in, that's no good. Their 3 best teams, they all have 1 loss right now. So the Pac-12, I think if they have whether it's Washington or USC, if somebody runs the table here, I think they're getting a team in. All these teams are going to lose at some point. It just happened to be all this week. What do you make of this mess that we are in? Any team in serious trouble here?
It's a mess. I don't even know.
Texas is back.
Hell on a stick. Here's my dingus.
And then they still won.
Okay.
Despite being back. Oh, it was gone now. I don't even know which one was the most surprising because all of them were surprising.
Probably, I would say Washington.
Washington against the 127th defense. I think the Washington State one, it's not as much that they lost, but it's how bad they lost. I remember, I'm usually up pretty late, and I planned on watching that entire thing. And at 27-3, I was just like, yep, this is over. I guess I'm going to bed now, which is rare for me on late night games when I get home from work. And Clemson is surprising just because I think that was the biggest gap in talent, and they still lost to Dino Babers, who, side note to Stacking, is a huge Game of Thrones fan, so you gotta be a certain fan.
Does Clemson win?
I can't remember a weekend. I saw somewhere there's no time, or at least never in the regular season, have this many top 10 teams lost. The only other time it's happened was on New Year's Day 40 years ago.
Does Clemson win that game with their quarterbacks in there?
Yep. Well,
he played a half or so, and the defense wasn't great in that game. So
I don't know Clemson who they play the next couple of weeks, or if they've had a bye or not. If Kelly Bryant ends up coming back in the next week or two, and they can kind of float without him, I think Clemson's the AC and get in the playoff. But if he's out for a month, or is playing but is incredibly hobbled and not that effective, it could make things bad for the ACC. Just in terms of wanting to get a team in the playoff. Because, Miami's undefeated, and I don't want to say Miami can't get in.
Oh, come on here.
They won their games, but it's not like Miami's looked great the last couple of weeks.
No, not at all.
But to their credit, they have won.
Clemson's got a bye.
I know that North Carolina State and Clemson play here in a couple weeks, pulling up the Clemson schedule.
North Carolina State, who's leading the division right now, is on top of everybody else, and Louisville, who's in last place. Something we clearly all knew was going to happen a month ago.
Yep. So, fortunately for Clemson,
on a bye.
They are off. They're off this upcoming week, so Bryant can get his concussion and his ankle all resolved. Home to Georgia Tech. That's going to be a dangerous game, but having 2 weeks to prepare for the triple option will help. And then at North Carolina State, November 4th. So if they can get by that, they'll win the rest of their games. But this is a very intriguing 2-week stretch here with Georgia Tech and North Carolina State.
What do we think here at Carolina State, Charlie? We got they're at Notre Dame in 2 weeks. They're against Clemson, then after that, Cupcake City. So if North Carolina State can, win these next 2, I think they are a serious, serious playoff team.
It's going to be tough to beat either Notre Dame or Clemson. I'm certainly not saying they can't do it, being that they almost beat Clemson last year. I think they lost in overtime, and they literally beat Notre Dame last year. But I don't know. There's a lot of similarities to North Carolina State this year and a couple of years ago when North Carolina lost their first game to South Carolina, just like NC State did this year, and then won every game until they played in the ACC title game against Clemson. I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to lose somewhere else. I would like to see NC State basically do the same thing, though, and be in the conference title game with a chance to get into the playoff, just because it would be fun and interesting and different. That defense for NC State's pretty good.
There were folks that were hankering that, ACC may be in the discussion for the best of the conferences. Clemson, the best team last year, and Florida State was preseason number 2, and they've got the quarterback issue. And Louisville, with the Heisman winner, has not been good. So you've got 2 of those teams who are poor, but then you've got Miami playing well. You've got North Carolina State playing pretty well. You even have something called Virginia at 5-1, for Christ's sake. And Vatech's pretty good. Gatech's pretty good. As we're halfway through this thing, we've seen the Pac-12 at the top falter, seen Michigan look like garbage at the Big Ten. You've seen the Big 12, Oklahoma look like garbage here for seemingly the last month. ACC, maybe not great teams with Miami, Carolina State, and Virginia at the top of that mess, but where would you say, Charlie, ACC? Preseason good, but it's a whole different bunch of teams at the top.
Yeah, I think it's still good. I think it's probably, I feel like the ACC is the deepest conference right now. I don't know if they have the same amount of title contenders that maybe the Big Ten or the SEC does, because they both got 2 that look like they could get in. And while Miami still could, I feel like Clemson's the only one that really truly looks like they might be one of the 5 best teams in the country. But I mean, when you're talking like the difference between number 3 and number 9, that feels like and the difference that they're still good. Like the SEC, there might not be much difference between 4 and 10, but they don't look very good. Where with the ACC, it looks like there's just more like above average B-plus teams than maybe any other conference right now.
Virginia? Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I believe I've heard this, that Louisville, when the basketball team receives the death penalty, the football team will accept just ask that they receive the death penalty too for losing to Boston College.
Kill me. So they say kill me is what they ask for.
That's what I'm seeing here. Latest reports.
Probably worth noting, too, that I think it's not a surprise that both over the last 4 or 5 years, the Big Ten and the ACC, as they have upgraded the coaching profiles of the conference and have hired good coaches, that's made the teams better. And as the SEC makes a lot of really weird, not all of them bad, but some very strange hires and gives some coaches bad contracts they don't deserve, that the SEC, like outside of Alabama and Georgia, doesn't look great right now.
Larry Fedora getting that money, getting paid. Virginia has to beat Boston College next week at home, then they go to Pitt. If they can win that, they'd be 7-1. That'd be somewhat amazing. Virginia football in the mix. Then you have Miami. They have Syracuse and Carolina the next 2 weeks. By all means, Stack, and they should be 7-0 before they host Vatech, before they host Notre Dame. What are the chances we get game day the week before Thanksgiving, undefeated Miami versus like 9-1 Virginia? That sounds great.
Oh God, I hope
not. I hope so.
You hope so? All right.
I've been on this Miami a couple weeks now. Miami undefeated. They're going to look and be at least 7-0 going against Vatech at home.
Where would they host game day? Would they host it at Hard Rock Stadium where 10,000 Hurricanes fans will be in attendance? Because
do it up hard.
They'll do it from Stacken's living room, and then they'll just fly the people out to Miami.
That's true. I mean, they may as well. I mean, you'll get just as many people for the game as you would fit in my living room.
I don't know where they're going to do it, but I know that they're going to do it live. That's what I know. They're going to do it live.
You're looking live.
Just for fun, can any of us name a player or a coach for Virginia? I can name the head coach.
Bronco Mendenhall.
That's it. That's all we know about Virginia.
Yeah, other than Bronco Mendenhall, the head coach, I can't tell you any other players that play for him.
They lost to Indiana. That's their one loss, to Indiana. Good win. Good win, Hoosiers. So a very, very odd week for college football. My guy Butch Jones seemingly hanging by a thread. I hope Alabama's the mercy killing next week. Put him away, Nick. Put him away for good.
Mini conspiracy theory, maybe not conspiracy theory, more optics theory, that basically they were going to fire him the second they lost that game.
But
South Carolina. And they were just like, you know what? Let's not have the interim guy's first game be against Alabama. Let's just wait and fire him after Alabama wins by 40.
Well, does Tennessee score? Yes or no?
Yes.
I say I don't know. I don't think so. They haven't scored what?
I would say no, because I think even though they rolled against Arkansas, they're still in Nick Saban rat poison. They had a close game against A&M, so they're upset. And I think you're still going to get angry Alabama. And I think it's going to be like, you know, I get since Georgia won 41-0, I wouldn't be surprised if they let's win by more than that. Let's shut them out and score more than 41. Let's win 15-0.
Thank God that CBS is going to.
Are they broadcasting this?
Yep, CBS is going to broadcast this bloodbath. So.
Soak it up, son. Soak it up.
Is it in Tennessee or in Alabama?
It's in Alabama.
No, it's in Tuscaloosa.
It's in Alabama. This is going to be bad. It's going to be real bad. It's going to be fun.
I guess you're right, because if Tennessee could only score 9 points in their 2 home games.
They haven't scored a touchdown in a couple weeks.
South Carolina. You probably aren't going to go into Tuscaloosa and put up.
I'm going to toss out 2 other recent games and tell me if Alabama tops what these other 2 teams did. Do they chop Georgia beating Tennessee in Knoxville 41-0?
Yes.
Or Ohio State beating Nebraska in Lincoln 56-14?
As far as against Tennessee, 56-14, or
does Alabama beat 10? So I guess that's more combined margin of victory.
I think this could be like 56-0.
I can see that. It's not going to be pretty.
Oh, is it going to be worse or better than Alabama pantsing Vanderbilt? What, a few weeks back?
Not quite that bad, but similar, I would say. Very similar.
Yeah, agreed.
Oh, can I run through a couple of my favorite games here this upcoming week?
After having 2 straight weeks where I don't think there were any ranked teams playing, there's some games between ranked teams this week.
There are, but that's not what I'm looking at here. Come on. Here we go.
We do have Michigan at Penn State. Hopefully Michigan can play defense. That'd be good.
Nope, don't care about that. Here we go. 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Central Time. No TV for this one. Goss Southern at UMass. Combined records 0-11. Something's got to give.
Who's going to have the balls to pick that in the pick?
It's the same UMass team that only lost by 3 or 4 to Tennessee.
That's very true.
Really don't see how that game's not in the pick 'em.
And then 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central Time. Again, no TV. 1-6 BYU at 1-6 East Carolina. Those are my 2 games of the week.
How bad is BYU? I mean, by no means did I think BYU was going to win 10 games this year. I didn't think they were going to be this bad, though. I still thought they'd win like 7 games or so.
They're very bad. They can't score. They're very boring. It's the best of all worlds. Terrible team that sucks to watch.
Hey, the best thing was their mascot dancing with the cheerleaders last week. I don't know if anyone saw that on College Game Day here. It was you had one job segment. It's pretty good.
Or she, whoever was good at dancing.
BYU, you suck. You suck bad.
You know what though? They do get San Jose State here in a couple of weeks, and they do get to host UMass. So
bowl bound or not? We say.
Oh, hell no. This team is not bowl bound.
There we go. Nebraska made a hire of an AD, a 66-year-old gentleman from Washington State.
His last name is Moose, so that bumps it up a letter grade anyways. It's a sweet name, Bill Moose.
Did you expect him to go somebody younger?
I know there were reports that, like, the final... They hired a search firm to get the athletic director, so it's always tough to know, like, who's leaking stuff. There were people that were saying the final three were either Jeff Long at Arkansas, Jamie Pollard at Iowa State, and I'm blanking on the name, but the guy at Oregon. So I assumed it was going to be one of those guys. I did not expect it to be this guy. I know some people are upset because they're like, I've never heard of this guy. And I think, to be fair,
well, yeah.
Most of us don't know most athletic directors. I can name like 6 athletic directors in college football right now. 7 if we include FCS, so I could say Justin Sell. So, I mean, I don't know. Before, Washington State got better under him. Oregon was good under him. I don't know if he's going to be great. It appears that they're at least not going to be like, oh, let's get Mike Riley and do that. So hopefully, whether he's good or not, all that matters is who he hires as their football coach. If he makes a good football hire, people will love him and say he's great. If he makes a bad hire, he'll get fired.
Are you saying that Mike Riley will not return?
I'm going to put this. Let's put this in a fair way. I think it's possible that he could win enough games this season to save his job.
But he will not.
But after losing 38-17 to Wisconsin at home and 56-14 to Ohio State to drop to 3-4, I think it's unlikely they win out, considering they still have to play Penn State this year.
If they win, those are the top 3 teams in Big Ten.
If they won every other one, they'd go 7-5, and it feels brash to assume they're going to win at Purdue, at Minnesota, hosting Northwestern and hosting Iowa. I mean, they could win those games, but they could just as easily lose. And I think once you're at 6-6, I don't think there's any way he keeps his job at 6-6. I mean, and this isn't just at Nebraska. I think at most Power 5 schools, if you're 6-6 or worse in 2 or 3 years, you're probably not going to keep your job unless it's like, Kansas or someplace like that.
Scott Frost seems to be the guy. 1 year at Central Florida, have them go like 11-1, make a big bowl, and head north. Head back home, shall we?
This is where things get weird. Like, it's getting to the point that if it's anybody but Scott Frost, I might cry a little bit because he looks so good at Central Florida, and I just think, it'd be so fun and such a great story for a former national title winning quarterback at Nebraska to be the head coach. And that Nebraska's fan base never agrees on if coaches should get hired or fired, like Washington, D.C. politics. It feels like if Scott Frost got hired, most people would be like, yeah, maybe we can be good. So, but yeah, for being a grown man, if they hire somebody else, or he's like, nah, I'm not going there, I might actually shed tears.
Or what if you get Bo Pelini back for a second run at it?
It'd be funny. I'll admit that I'd probably laugh, and then I'd cry, and then I'd throw up. But I would have a wide range of emotions and feelings.
There's something I could say there, but I won't because we're doing this live. So
we're doing it live. Where did this? Yes.
I was just gonna say, shout out to Rutgers.
What a throttle, you son of a bitch!
Way to go to Champaign, Illinois, and kick the shit out of Illinois. I picked you this week in the pick'em. Yay, Rutgers!
Illinois.
Did you win? Not the worst team in the conference.
Illinois, worst team in that conference. That's bad.
And Minnesota plays Illinois this week. Something's got to give.
Charlie, where did this new AD come from?
Washington State.
Who's Washington State's head coach?
Mike Leach is the Washington State head coach.
How's that fancy your dick right there?
Let's put it this way. I would prefer Nebraska not run that offense because when it gets cold and windy and rainy or snowy, it might
build a dome, put a roof on that thing.
If they're going to do it, though, I would definitely want it to be Mike Leach. So, like, if they went Mike Leach, I wouldn't be, like, ecstatic, but I'd be like, you know what? This could be interesting. I can live with this.
I would love that because then Big Ten Network would be my go-to channel just to watch his post-game press conferences.
Jim Harbaugh, Mike Leach. So I'm number 1 and number 2.
Also, I feel like we could find, since Nebraska and Minnesota are reigniting the $5 bits of broken chair trophy, I feel like Mike Leach and PJ Fleck could maybe have some interesting moments of poking and prodding each other that might be funny.
Very exciting. Any of these other teams here in this this top 10 that you're not real sold on? Georgia, not real hot on Georgia. Have to make a concession stacking. I told you a few nights ago, Florida's winning the East. That ain't going to happen. I'm sorry. I have to take that back.
I'm sold on the Georgia defense. I don't know if I'm sold on the rest of Georgia.
They can't, if they go, how would you, I'm getting into these scenarios of undefeated teams losing the title game. Georgia goes undefeated. They play Alabama. That's an awfully interesting scenario, I think.
If the four teams right now, Alabama, Penn State, Georgia, and TCU, I would be, that Penn State-Georgia matchup would be stellar to see, two or three of the best running backs in the country go up against one another, Nick Chubb and Sonny Michel against Saquon Barkley. Sign me up for that game. Give me
Is that what your playoff would, are those your four playoff teams if the season ended? Or if the season ended after 6 games? Is that who you would put in?
Well, Alabama for sure, yes. I would say Penn State. I would say probably Georgia. I don't know if I would put TCU yet.
Beat Oklahoma State.
They did. They did.
What Alabama's got so far this year.
I would put Clemson in over.
Florida State would be better, but
I would put Clemson in over Georgia.
Clemson's got good wins. That
Clemson.
loss is tough, but they've got really good wins though.
But Syracuse is a program, as we say, that is on the come.
As long as Babers is there, I don't think Syracuse is going to win a national title or the ACC anytime soon. But I can see Syracuse being a fun, interesting team for 3 or 4 years.
Penn State's been impressive. They haven't beaten anybody yet. Their schedule, they got Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State coming up here. Penn State hasn't beaten anybody yet. And the one decent team they played in Iowa, that one came down to last second win there. So.
I guess just looking at it, there isn't one team that jumps up, in terms of the undefeated teams. Wisconsin and Miami certainly don't do anything for me. So, I guess why not?
Wisconsin,
not
Nebraska, and BYU. Sarcastic.
That's so true. I can't argue with facts.
Well, there you go.
I'm not the president, so I can't argue with that. By the way, Kansas State looks a little overrated.
See, and Oklahoma, not good at Baylor, not good against Iowa State, not great against Texas. Oklahoma. If I thought they would beat.
I tell you at the beginning of the season what was going to happen with them.
Well, I still like them here. I don't know. Between them and Oklahoma State, I just see the Big 12 shit in the bed again. I think they'll just all beat each other. Nobody's going to. I think the Big 12, Charlie's the conference that gets left out. I think Oklahoma beats TCU.
I agree that I think the Big 12 is going to get left
again.
Out. I think it's possible that we get the Alabama, Georgia undefeated, and they both get in, and the Pac-12 gets left out also.
How would they do that, though? Would they put Alabama and Georgia 1-4 again to play again back-to-back?
They claim that they look at it completely new and fresh each time, so they would rank them on how good they think they are. They wouldn't. So, I don't know, and it depends.
Then you'd have either Penn State or Ohio State. I think one of those two teams get in. Alabama. Georgia would be interesting. And I think, Clemson's really your only ACC team. Maybe Miami.
Let's say Georgia goes undefeated, takes down Alabama in the SEC championship game.
They're your number 1 seed.
Is there any scenario where Alabama would not get in the playoffs? So let me run through some hypotheticals here. TCU undefeated.
They're in.
You're going to put
Penn State to also go undefeated.
There's not going to be. I don't think there's going to be more than 2 undefeated teams.
Right. Okay.
There's probably only going to be 1.
It's possible that could happen in Stacking, and it would be interesting to see. But I think in the last 30 years, we've only had one time where 3 like power conference teams all went undefeated.
No,
right. I'm merely just presenting hypotheticals here. Like Penn State, let's say they go undefeated, so is Penn State going to be in?
Penn State's in, Georgia's in, TCU is in.
I guess it would depend on how bad Georgia would beat Alabama. But let's say,
no one-loss team is jumping Alabama. Alabama would be the number one-loss team.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Because could let's say USC runs through the rest of their table or their schedule, because they have to go play Notre Dame in South Bend. They would have to go play presumably Washington in the Pac-12 championship game.
Stanford
might forget that they have that. They beat Stanford earlier, and Stanford maybe doesn't look quite as good, but arguably, because their loss came earlier than Alabama's did, their wins would be more impressive than Alabama's as well. I just want to throw USC into the mix because just presenting it here for our friend David Schott.
Alabama would be number 1 going into that game. I don't see them dropping Alabama from 1 to 5.
I think the only one-loss team I could see getting in ahead of Alabama would be Clemson, but there's not a scenario where Clemson and Alabama
both have 1 loss.
Both would have 1 loss, and there would be 4 undefeated teams, because that would mean that if Clemson wins the ACC, that Miami would have a loss then, so they wouldn't be undefeated and they'd be out.
Do we need a bunch of 2-loss teams for South Florida or Central Florida to get into this mix here? SDSU shit the bed against Boise State. These teams, if they run the table, they'll be in the top 10. There's got to be a bunch of 2-loss teams here.
Yeah, I think you need multiple. It's okay to have 1 or 2 undefeated or 1-loss teams, but you'd have to have 3 teams that have 1 loss or fewer, and everyone else would have 2 or more, I think.
Do you think they would get in then? Would they get in over a 2-loss team? I don't think so.
I'm trying to think of the schedule of both. Actually, I don't know if they would, because I think Central Florida was supposed to play Georgia Tech, but that got canceled because of the hurricane. So without that, they would have a win over Maryland, and I think Maryland might win 7 games or so.
Memphis?
And the American's a good conference. It's probably the best of the group of 5, but I don't think they're going to have, because I'm trying to remember what we've seen the last few years. They call them like the playoff committee really looks at wins over other top 25 teams. I don't know if Central Florida or South Florida would have any, except if one of them beats the other, and I don't know if just one would. I don't think they're going to get in this year.
Central Florida and South.
There's only 1 team with 1 loss or fewer.
Central Florida and South Florida play the final week of the year, Thanksgiving Saturday. So that's a good little game. That's a good little game there at Central Florida. Navy's a good team. Memphis is a good team. So they would have some good wins. I think Central Florida would be your team there. Looking at it. Is the team.
Here, can you see this? Can you make this out? Probably not.
TCU, Iowa State? Defensive efficiency.
That's Iowa State. Top defensive efficiency. So TCU 99.3. They defeated Kansas State 26-6. Iowa State was second, but poor ESPN.
Just this week or what? Just this week.
This was this week. Yep, this was this week.
They played Kansas and held them to 105 yards.
So you see what the result says though for Iowa State?
They defeated themselves.
Yes, there you go. So
inter-squad
it's easy to
scrimmage.
have the top defensive efficiency when you're beating
yourself. Not a good coach, because good coaches don't beat themselves.
They don't.
Says that they did beat themselves.
So we got Virginia good. We got Iowa State winning games. Just college football. College football is different.
I think that's 4 wins for Iowa State. They might get to 6 or 7 wins this year.
It's different. A different world in which we live.
Nebraska, Tennessee, and Florida are all terrible.
What a life. Finally, I don't know if you know this, Stackin. The NBA starts on Wednesday.
Oh, God.
Oh, God, he says. Oh, God. Not like the fucking hockey's been going for 2 weeks already, but let's...
NBA regular season enthusiast.
I've already done the service of purchasing NBA League Pass for you and yours, so that'll be exciting.
Well, I'm going to need it because I have a kid coming up here, so I have many long nights ahead of me.
Nothing like some Grizzlies and Kings action at 10:30 at night. It's a very long season. It's now 2 weeks longer for a few more off days. The NBA regular season, it's the worst. It really is the worst. Hockey's not great. The NBA regular season, very bad. I think I told somebody. I get excited about the season, and then about the first quarter of the first game, I'm like, all right, that's enough. Let's get the playoffs here. So we got some teams. We got Golden State beating Cleveland again for the 4th year in a row. We've got Oklahoma City made some moves. It's good to see. Minnesota made some moves. Everybody in the West. Houston. Philadelphia's intriguing in the East. The Bulls bottomed out. And you've got Boston with Kyrie Irving. Stacking, where's your excitement level compared to any other year? With all of these, you got about 6 or 7 teams that are worth watching.
Well, as always, I do follow the season. I do follow along with the season. I don't watch very many of the games, but I'll catch highlights on SportsCenter or whatnot. So this year, of course, Minnesota, they piqued my interest last year. I watched more Timberwolves basketball.
What a disappointment. What a goddamn disappointment that was.
Previous years combined, so them getting Jimmy Butler, I'm curious to see how they will do in the Western Conference, along with the Texas Longhorns, because they are back. But
okay.
Overall, here the Western Conference is very intriguing to me. Just obviously because of the superstar talent and the super teams essentially that are all out in the West, and the East has gotten so significantly worse. I mean, Boston, no thank you. This is Cleveland's to
no thank you.
I mean, not the whole thing. I still think it's Golden State it's going to be Golden State and Cleveland. So we're just having 6 months of regular season.
No.
However long it is.
About 8.
Longer. 8.
You got what, April? 5,
October,
6, 7?
No, 6. October because it's month 10, month
April.
4, so 6 months.
Well, yeah.
So 6
November,
months
December,
of garbage
November,
to get to the
March,
playoffs, and we'll have
April.
we'll have another month and a half of garbage. So 7.5 total months until the NBA Finals. Can't wait for this shit.
What could happen for us, for at least you or at least anybody else to give a shit about this? 66 game season, maybe not so damn long.
Yeah, I think shorten the regular season would be a wise idea. Also, no super teams. But I mean that's
no
that's not
super
Golden
teams.
State's fault. Well, look, the competitive balance in the NBA is worse than any other sport, any other league right now. I mean, it's worse than in baseball. It's worse than in hockey, that's for sure. Worse than the NFL. The parity in the NBA, that's a mythical term. There is no parity right now in the NBA. It's Golden State, Cleveland, Boston's on the rise, Oklahoma City's on the rise, Minnesota's getting there. But there's nothing else after that. Sure, Washington's a cute little team. Toronto, that's fine. They just
Milwaukee
beat up on the poor. I mean, but what?
Milwaukee.
No, I mean Milwaukee's good, but I mean in a weak East, who gives a shit? I mean, they aren't gonna.
Okay, how about this?
They're not gonna do anything in the grand scheme of things.
How does this? I wish Ottenkirk was here, Charlie. This would have been a damn.
I've got a wrestling analogy.
Oh, here we go.
About this.
By the way,
or do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first, Corinne?
You go first. I don't have nothing.
I was going to compare the NBA of how there's. I mean, I think it's going to be Golden State and Cleveland in the finals still. I think it's clearly going to be that. I think there's other good teams in the West that could maybe make Golden State sweat a little bit. So I don't want to say there's only 2 good teams, but was pretty inevitable. It's going to be Golden State and Cleveland, which that reminds me of, does the NBA Krens kind of feel like late towards the end of the WCW run where there was the NWO, the NWO Wolfpack, and it was basically like if you weren't in those two, it didn't matter because everybody who mattered was in one of those two groups.
I like that. I can see that. That's a good analogy.
How about, speaking of wrestling, the Sheik they had a reference to the Sheik on College Game Day, and I knew what they were talking about.
Oh, fuck.
And
Iron Sheik?
The Iron Sheik, yep.
Oh, and you knew that.
I'm not sure I much care for the name, but they mentioned it on Game Day. I was like, yep, wrestling, know this one, score one. Looking forward to telling the guys this.
Very good, I'm very impressed. How do you know him?
Through talking with you guys.
Is that right? Oh, shit.
I mean, I've heard of him, but I couldn't pick him out of a two-person lineup between him and Adrian Peterson. So.
I would hope you could. Does baseball now have the super teams? Houston, Dodgers, Cubs, Indians, Yankees. Is that comparable?
They build from within, though, to a degree. I mean, with the minor leagues and everything, and clearly, until we get a team that is in the World Series 4 straight years. I would say like the Yankees in the 90s were kind of that dynasty or that super team because they would just buy all of their teams. But now they've revamped their farm system a lot more. Washington, they can't ever break through, so I can't call them a super team quite yet, though they have acquired plenty of guys.
And you hate the Cubs. You despise the Cubs.
I don't hate the Cubs. I'm annoyed now, I'm done with them and all the attention that they get. But they're a good team, and they've built from within. Theo Epstein is an amazing general manager, and he's going to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But I guess if you're looking at it, the NBA, there's really no parity. I get that the West has gotten significantly better with certain teams, but it's at the expense of other teams. And at the end of the day, you really have only 4 or 5 teams that have a legitimate shot at the title, and really there's only 2 or 3 that you could say, yeah, we know this is what's going to happen barring any significant injury. It's going to be Golden State, it's going to be Cleveland, and then if you want to throw Houston or San Antonio as a potential team in
a dark horse. Huh?
Oklahoma City?
Yeah,
Oklahoma City, that's fine. Like say 4 or 5 teams, there's just nothing there for the rest of the other teams. I think didn't Michael Jordan say it too, that there's 4 super teams and 28, disparity-ridden teams?
Yeah.
Why is a fan of the Charlotte Hornets
in the NBA?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, 4 and 26. You're right. My apologies. Bad math there.
You want the Hornets?
I did go to Marshall High School.
Marshall.
But why, if I'm a fan of the Charlotte Hornets or the Orlando Magic, do I even give a shit about this?
The Magic, no. Is there bad? The Hornets, you got Kemba Walker, who's a guy.
Okay, but at the end of the day, you might win a playoff series, maybe.
That'd be great.
You just have no hope at a title. You
signed. At some point, it feels like some of these teams, especially the smaller market teams, as the NBA TV money's rising and the salaries are rising and the cap's rising, that they're just going to offer some of these guys that play for Golden State or San Antonio or Oklahoma City or Cleveland, that they're just going to be like, well, yeah, I guess I'm going to leave because I'm the 3rd best player here and I'm getting
Klay Thompson
a $50 million pay raise to go somewhere else, especially with Golden State because, obviously you want to win titles, but I would imagine that they've got at least some guys on their team who would be like, oh, I've got 3? Well, I guess I want to go get paid more. I'm going to go somewhere else. Now, it might not be this year or next year, but I feel like we're rapidly approaching that point.
I think Klay Thompson is in that mix. I think that's the big name out there that would leave the Warriors, 2019 or so. Kevin Durant may leave after this
I think they're all staying.
And they could, and that's fine. But
Cubs are ahead.
Then you're like, okay, sweet. Golden State's just going to continue to dominate.
What is this? 1-0?
Like, I'm interested in Minnesota because of the trio. I want to see them make the playoffs this year. But if you can't tell me that, I mean, at least in the NFL, you can look at it and say, yeah, there's like 20 teams or so that have a legit shot.
Well, I mean, come on.
At the playoffs. And,
for fuck's sakes. Okay.
To make
okay, how about this? We're 6 games, we're 40% done with the NFL, right?
Yep.
New England.
Let's go 16. I'll go half the league.
No, for what? For Super Bowl?
Well, yeah.
Okay. New England, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Atlanta.
Philadelphia.
Fine.
Seattle.
Okay, right there. That's your list. Those 6 teams. Anybody that I'm leaving out that you're like, you know what? You got to put them in there because, I mean, especially the AFC. We know it's okay. No, I mean, Case Keenum is not going to the Super Bowl unless he's buying tickets.
Green Bay, he's got a defense. McKinnon's playing well right now. Thielen and Diggs are like the leading duo in terms of receiving.
They should be 6-2. They should be 6-2 by all means, and I fully expect him to go 8-8.
I mean, so you can throw Green Bay in the mix. I still think Houston and Tennessee are Houston more so than Tennessee because of our boy Deshaun Watson.
Like I just can't see anybody but Pittsburgh or New England going to the Super Bowl.
I haven't Pittsburgh apart from today has not been impressive at all this year. Today was their first impressive showing against the.
Just ask Kansas City's number.
I mean, we all know what the fuck. We all know Kansas City's going 13-3. We all know how the fuck that's going to end up. Washington.
New England or to Pittsburgh. I agree.
They're going to get a bye. They're going to lose to whoever the fuck it is. Pittsburgh. Doesn't matter. It's fucking Kansas City.
Yep.
I mean, we know that.
I just thought of an interesting comparison. That Kansas City, like the regular season, it doesn't look this way, and their quarterback's not as good. But the Chiefs are a lot like those Indianapolis Colts Peyton Manning teams before they won the Super Bowl. Like, not in terms of style, but it's just like, yep, they're really good, and then they make
they're not beating anybody.
Like, yeah, they're not getting to the Super Bowl.
Like, well, what's your Vikings take here? I mean, Case, if Bridgewater comes back, I'm intrigued. But Case Keenum, I mean, what do we?
I think he's got a successful shelf life of about 2.5 more games, and then the walls are going to come crashing in.
All right, you've got Baltimore next week. You got to beat Baltimore. You play the Browns in London. 6-2 at the bye. That's pretty goddamn good. 6-2 at the bye. Second half of the schedule, pretty difficult. But, I mean, Case Keenum, I just have trouble even picturing him getting a team to the playoffs. I can't see that.
I think that's
I'll give you this second. Like, I could see Minnesota making the playoffs, but like and I don't want to sound too cliched here, but like when everything ratchets up in the playoffs, I don't see Case Keenum being like, oh, well, we're down 10 with 8 minutes left in the game, and we're going to put it on this guy's shoulders, and he's going to lead us to victory.
I agree, but I do think that the NFC is so wide open that they're talking about the Philadelphia freaking Eagles with Carson Wentz being the best team in the NFC. That doesn't don't get me wrong, Wentz has played very well so far this year, but I don't think that the Eagles are a complete team. They're doing well right now. They did have 4 of their first 6 games on the road, so that is a feather in their cap that they are 5-1. No pun intended, but I guess it works.
Hey.
But I mean, the NFC is so wide open that I think it's not fair to Case Keenum or the Vikings to just immediately dismiss them.
Get them out. All right, NBA.
If they had beat the Lions, I think there would be a whole different.
Well, that seems to be more difficult than it has any right to be. So 6-2. I'm already.
That's who called for the Lions to make the playoffs. I don't know if they will because they lost today, but
well, that division's up for grabs, and
somebody's going to win it. It's not going to be the Bears. I feel confident in that.
So how the hell did we get on this? Oh, yeah.
Super teams, and how many teams have a chance to win this thing here? Yeah. LeBron's got an ankle. He could miss the season. It doesn't matter. They can still win there. I forgot to do what I was going to do a couple weeks ago. Nope, we can do it now. I guess I got enough. Just kind of page through the list here. Who wants to go first?
Oh, I remember this question.
We'll go through the list here, see how many I think are. Charlie can go first. Who does Derrick Rose play for?
Give me a minute, because I think I saw this somewhere. He plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Charlie Hildebrand on the board. Boop.
Yep. Damn it, I knew that one.
Nathan Stacken.
No. Now, if I wouldn't have heard someone say that at work like
That's
3
difficult.
days ago, I would have listed 9 teams before I would have gotten to the Cavaliers.
You familiar with Jeremy Lin Stacken? Who does Jeremy Lin play for these days?
Jeremy Lin, doesn't he still play for the Brooklyn Nets?
We're 2 for 2, folks. We know our NBA folks. Charlie Hildebrand, you've heard of Jamal Crawford.
I have.
Who does Mr. Crawford play for these days?
I don't have the slightest clue. I got a 1 in 30 chance here. Let's see. I don't know if he was involved. It seems like everyone's moving west, so I'm going to guess a Western Conference team. Let's say the Denver Nuggets.
Nope. You got the conference right. He's with the Timberwolves.
There you go.
My Timberwolves.
Nathan Stacken.
Yeah.
Rajon Rondo plays for a team. Rajon Rondo.
Is he now? I believe he's with the Pelicans in New Orleans.
Look at him. Stacken knows it. He is with the Pelicans. Yes. Oh, for fuck's sakes. Luol Deng. Charlie Luol Deng.
Yeah, I haven't thought about him in a while. Let's see. He played at Duke. He played for your Bulls. I've heard of him at a few other places. He played for the Magic. I don't know if he's still with the Magic. You know what? I'm going to guess the Milwaukee Bucks.
Lakers.
No.
The Lakers. Wow.
Hello?
Yeah, I thought I was okay.
No.
I was going to say the Miami Heat.
Tyson Chandler.
He is with the Phoenix Suns right
Jesus Christ, we got a goddamn ringer on our hands here. My heavens. You gotta.
Pretend he doesn't watch NBA when he's been watching it.
How many goddamn fantasy teams do you have, Stacken? Jesus.
Zero. I just pay attention to the free agency where teams sign, and that's like I said. I'm intrigued by the. I just don't like the product. I'm not going to watch the games, but I know like.
I don't like McDonald's, but goddamn, I'll go to read the morning paper there. I'll tell you that much.
Stacken's got a standing Sunday appointment to discuss the NBA with Dustin Verrank every single week.
Just Phoenix
My
Suns
heart
and Knicks.
went out to him when the Diamondbacks bowed out.
True or false? You have an Amari Stoudemire podcast coming up.
False.
False. Charlie Hildebrand, Ricky Rubio. He's playing on some team of some sorts.
Let's see.
I'm trying to get stacked in here.
Paul and Charlie, and is one of these off book, and it's not one of the 30 NBA teams?
No.
Okay, so I can't guess Spain or anything like that. I don't know where. I think I saw where Rubio go. I don't remember. I will guess the Washington Wizards.
Utah Jazz.
Nathan Stacken. George Hill, Summer League favorite, George Hill.
Boy, this is the one I think you might stump me on. Because he was with the Jazz. I'm going to say. I think you got me here, but I will say the Nuggets.
Sacramento.
Doggone it.
See if I can find one more for each of you. Who are these guys and where do they play?
Even though I'm not doing well, I have enjoyed this game. It is fun.
Rudy Gay.
Let's see. It's funny that I remember like where most of these guys played college, and I remember where they were most famous in the NBA, but like for all of them, I don't have a clue where they are now, except Rose. Let's say that Rudy Gay plays for the Portland Trailblazers.
Went to the Spurs.
Interesting.
One more for...
Give me a shot to rebuttal that.
You knew it, right?
Well, we know you know Stackin.
Well, yeah.
Let's see
I mean, you got it on playing on your phone into your headphones while you sleep at night to make sure.
Well, I mean, I haven't gotten any sleep for the last week because I've been playing NBA 2K18 like nonstop after work. So
very nice. One more for Stackin. Who are we looking for here?
Was that serious or was that a joke, Stackin?
that was a joke. I do not have that.
I figured it was, but was gonna say, like, if you want to know who plays for what team, video games are pretty good.
That helps.
Pretty quickly.
Yes,
that helps. Stackin will give you this one here. Kelly Olynyk. I have no idea.
Doesn't he still play for Boston?
No. Miami for some reason.
Oh, did he go to Portland?
The Emperor's got no clothes. He didn't get
Went to Miami.
Did he go to Portland?
To Miami.
Okay. Oh, yes. Yep, okay.
Dwight Howard with Charlotte. Well, he's a guy. There you go. We all like Golden State to beat Cleveland, I assume.
Yep. 5 games.
I like Golden State to beat the Spurs. I don't like Chris Paul, so I don't think that Houston's thing is going to work. Oklahoma City, that's intriguing. I'll watch that. Give me Warriors Spurs. Hopefully.
Wait, which of those ones which team got Carmelo again?
Oklahoma City.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then for a split second, I thought maybe he went to Houston, and I couldn't remember.
Yep.
But yeah, that's right.
And I guess Boston. And Cleveland, that's a Cleveland plays Boston Wednesday. I'm intrigued by Kyrie Irving. I like that. That spices up it a little bit for me. So, what's your Boston, Cleveland, and then Golden State versus what?
Screw it. I am going Cleveland over the Washington Wizards. And I'm going Golden State over... Screw it again. Oklahoma City Thunder.
Oklahoma City, Golden State, I think would be the most fun series there could be. That'd be great.
That would be.
Yeah, I'd love to pick the Milwaukee Bucks to take on, or Washington to take on Cleveland, but I will go right now with Boston. I do like the Wizards pick. I'd like to take the Thunder as well, but I will go with, the hell with it. We'll go Warriors and Rockets. I do think Minnesota is going to get I will say they will get the 6th seed and have to take on Oklahoma City right away. So that's going to be a dandy of a first-round matchup.
Be good.
But, yeah, Golden State against Cleveland for the finals.
Charlie, where's Minnesota finish here? I think they are the 8th seed.
Oh, Stackin said 6, you said 8. I was going to say 7 anyways, and now it really works because it splits the difference.
You got the 7th seed, so we'll see how they do. Who wins the MVP? Westbrook won it last year. LeBron's the best player. If LeBron wants to play, he can win it. Dwayne Wade's in Cleveland. Isaiah Thomas is out until January. So maybe Cleveland. I don't know. Maybe Cleveland gets off to a bullshit of a start, maybe. We'll see how that goes.
I'm not going to take anyone on Golden State because they're so good, and I think they're going to take enough shots away from each other. It won't be them. You can make a case LeBron's going to win it every year. I don't think it'll be LeBron. I think James Harden's going to be the MVP.
James Harden was going to win it last year if it wasn't for Westbrook. Harden for the win.
I'd like to go Kevin Durant, but I will say it's either going to be Kawhi Leonard or the Greek Freak. So give me Kawhi Leonard.
I think it's going to be Kyrie Irving. I think Boston gets the 1 seed, and it's Kyrie Irving. That's what I think.
What Cleveland Boston play?
Wednesday night. Wednesday night, yes. LeBron may not play.
Over under? Well, let's just not do over under. Take a guess. Don't care about makes. How many shots does Kyrie Irving take?
35.
Like, does Irving take 50 shots in that game?
He'll take 28.
He's got Marcus Smart. He got Gordon Hayward, free agent pickup. Jason Tatum, who I think might be Rookie of the Year. Boston's got a pretty good deal there. I'd like to see Kyrie. I'd like to see what he can do.
I think this is I'm upset, and I'm going to try to score every point myself. I don't know if it'll work or not. I'm certainly not saying it's going to be that way for the whole season. But I think it's like the typical, in his prime, Allen Iverson game on steroids, where he's just like, I am owning this ball, and I'm going to take 80% of the shots.
Do you have a wrestling analogy for Kyrie Irving leaving Cleveland? Going to Boston.
He left under not good terms. It was him that forced the leave in a lot of ways, where the other people still liked him. So
looking at tag teams, looking at people changing companies. A lot of different.
I'm running them through. Do you have one? Or
I've got some. I don't know if they're any good.
I feel like. Well, no, I was going to give one, but that wouldn't work because people felt like let's see. How about?
If you
got, it's got to be surprising too that you're just like, wait, what? That doesn't make sense. So.
Would it be Kevin Nash and Scott Hall going to WCW? Was it that big of a deal?
I think that's a good one. I don't think it's quite that big. I was trying to think of something. But like, it's clearly bigger than when Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko and those guys left to go to the WWE. So, I don't know. I'm stumped. I wish I could come up with a better one off the top of my head.
Stacking.
I don't have any analogy.
Maybe like when I don't remember what his name was at WC when the 1, 2, 3 kid / X-Pac came back to the WWE, maybe.
Or
like a big deal and noticeable, but isn't like one of the 3 or 4 best guys.
Or when LeVar Ball stepped into the ring against the guy with the slick hair.
The Miz.
I can't remember what his name is.
The Miz.
What was his name?
The Miz.
Yes, thank you. The Miz.
Similar to that, you say?
I don't know. I'd just like to see LeVar Ball get the shit kicked out of him by The Miz. So.
Just for fun, friends. I know, Stackin, that you don't watch wrestling. How much would Stackin hate The Miz if you watched wrestling?
I probably wouldn't like him very much. Probably wouldn't like him much. Who would Stackin's favorite guy be?
Who would what?
Who would Stackin's favorite guy be? Or more guys you would hate?
Well, I think it would have been Cena, but Cena's towards the end of this thing. So, I mean, I don't know much about, like, the current roster. I don't know. I get the sense Stackin in like late '90s WCW at its prime, like would have loved Goldberg.
I'd be like, you'd like Stone Cold, and your parents would say, Stackin, quit watching that stuff. God damn it.
Yeah. True.
John Wall may be a guy. John Wall could be a guy as well. There we go. NBA preview, folks, as thorough as you'll find anywhere. Anywhere. Broken it down 7 different ways. Nathan Stackin, your final thoughts.
I just want to say it was beyond funny to me to watch ESPN after the men's national team lost to Trinidad and Tobago. Tobago, your Tobago, my Tobago.
That's right.
And watch Taylor Twellman just absolutely lose his shit. I do not like this guy at all.
You don't like this guy?
He seems to me to be a pretentious douche.
But,
what's that?
Said, well, he is a soccer fan.
Well, okay, fair enough. But just for him to lose, and I don't take any pleasure necessarily out of the U.S. losing, but it
that makes one of us.
It doesn't give me any sense of like I didn't lose any sleep over it. I'm not sad or anything by that. But just to see him just absolutely go off on the program, on the team, on the direction of soccer in the United States. It was so funny to watch, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm sorry, Taylor, but yeah, sorry, not sorry.
I'm stealing this from somewhere else, but I think it might be valid. How come nobody's making a big deal? And to be fair, I don't care about soccer. But how come nobody's making a big deal that the United States had to play two countries in both Trinidad and Tobago? That seems a little unfair.
That's a very fair point. A population-based question, though, the United States still would have had like 50 million or
50 million
to beat everybody.
No,
I would imagine if I would be shocked if Trinidad and Tobago had 10 million people.
They don't. They have like 2 million, so it's like.
I mean, how the fuck? I mean, 2 million people. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I was gonna pull it up.
Something population-wise the size of North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Take all those people in there, you got 2 million. And that's what's beating us. We're knocking on the door of 400 million folks, and we can't beat this goddamn team. Terrific.
Population 2016 estimate, according to Wikipedia, less than 1.5.
Good Lord.
People.
Yep, 1,369,125.
Get out of Wyoming.
Basically, it's about the size population of Nebraska.
North and South Dakota.
Houston is a bigger city than Trinidad and Tobago.
It's not great. It's not great. So that's a whole lot of fun. And like I said last week, I'm excited for all the people that have no idea they're out of it yet, and then it's going to come World Cup time next year, and they're like, what? We're not in it? Oh shit! I guess we're not in this thing. Goddamn.
Yeah, think of all the bars. You know, the people that are going to come in dressed in the red, white, and blue, and they're going to be like, hey, yeah, when aren't you going to turn it on to the World Cup and so we can watch the U.S.? And the bartenders will be like,
Actually, even better, I hope they literally do turn it to the World Cup. And they're like, where's the United States? This is North Korea against Iran. They're like, well, the U.S. didn't make it.
Pick a terrible team.
I don't know why I picked those two countries. I don't think either of them are good at soccer.
Because they're the two countries that America would go to war with.
Very exciting. Charlie, blogs, what do we got in the road trip this week? We're going to Happy Valley. Don't bring the kids.
Yeah. Picked Michigan State and Penn State. I think it looked a little bit better on paper than it does at this current point right now, but I think it still could be pretty good. Michigan's not great on offense, but they've got a really good defense, and we'll see how Penn State and Saquon Barkley and Trace McSorley do against that Michigan defense. When it's Penn State's defense against Michigan's offense, it probably won't be all that entertaining.
Friend of the program, Will Rottler, very happy. He's at Penn State, so he's very stoked for this.
He's very excited. Hope it's a whiteout.
We can only hope.
Podcast for Charlie. What you got? The Vermilion squad beating folks up left and right.
Yeah, I didn't know how much you guys want to talk about that or that.
Not at all, but
USD looks really good this year. Now, to be fair, I have not actually watched them play. This is just from talking about them with other guys at work, looking at box scores and reading stories to come up with the topics to talk about. But they're 6-0.
They're without a doubt the best team in South
Dakota.
I
don't. Yeah, not only do I think they're going to beat South Dakota State, I don't think they're going to win by 50, but I can see them beating SDSU by 20.
Will SDSU make the playoffs?
I don't think they will, but I can see it happening.
Playoff stacking, playoff bound or not?
Once they pull their heads out of their asses, yes.
Is 7-4 good enough? With no good wins, they got. They lose to North Dakota State and USD. 7-4.
I think they can still get in at that point. Yep, just because it's such a difficult.
Who do you blame?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think. I don't know if they're crumbling under the pressure or the expectations that they are a championship caliber team. I mean, I thought that everything had gotten settled down after last week's win against Southern Illinois. And then you just couldn't ask for a worse start against Northern Iowa. I mean, between the turnovers and the weather, I'd say stop scheduling Northern Iowa for Hobo Day games, but that's just me. I don't think there's any blame to go around other than the guys on the team just needing to do their job. I think isn't that a Stig mantra? do your job, go 1-0 each week. He's not on the field throwing turnovers or throwing interceptions or fumbling the football at all. He's not missing extra points and field goals. Those are the players. So once they decide to really put the focus in, and I shouldn't say that they aren't putting the focus in right now, but certainly they're just really kicking themselves with a ton of bad mistakes right now. So once they figure things out, this team certainly can get on a roll, but it doesn't look good right now. It really doesn't. Saturday was a baffling loss to I saw some would say inferior Northern Iowa team. I won't quite say inferior, but this is certainly not the team that you and I have gotten to know over the years. So,
What if I told you?
Is it possible that South Dakota State has really good offensive skill guys, but has bad lines and not a great defense, and that's the problem?
Hey now.
Sorry, my dog didn't like that.
Absolutely.
I guess that's the answer to your question.
What if I told you I think the quarterback is hurt?
Is hurt?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe. It's possible.
I mean, did he get hurt against Montana State?
I don't know. Not playing great. Not playing great.
A whole lot here lately, so potentially.
We shall see. For Charlie Hildebrand, for Nathan Stacken, for everybody else. Next week, we should know the World Series. In fact, we will know the World Series. No show next week, though, so we'll talk about it the next week. Nathan Stacken, Charlie Hildebrand, Lounge 232. We'll see you in a few weeks. I'll get the damn thing closed here. There.